Hi guys, what is going on and welcome back to another episode of Conqueror's Blade. So today, Javelin Sergents. A really interesting unit. I've not looked at Javelins for a long time. Last time I actually really checked out Javelins was way back in closed beta, so this is way like 6 months, no more than 6 months, that was July I think we went to open beta, so sort of 7 or 8 months ago now, it's the last time I ever touched Javelins, and I've really enjoyed playing them. So I thought it was kind of a unit that I wanted to touch on sort of as a unit to create a video on, so here we are. So I went Javelin Sergents over Imperial Javelineers. I talked to a few people beforehand to kind of get an idea which one I fancied going down, because I was kind of looking at the both and I was interested in both, and I was basically told that Javelin Sergents were by and large the better unit. They have a considerable larger amount of ammo. They lose out slightly, maybe on the damage per javelin volley, but very, very small. And you know, with the doctrine they've got on, I can get these up to 5 throws of javelins, which is really good. Gives you, means very versatile because you can 5 throws before you have to go and reload is a seriously large amount of damage you can inflict. You can really get up to sort of 30, 35, 40 kills with javelins before you even need to head back to the supply point. So they can make for some really nice games. They are a heroic era unit, so they cost 15,000 to unlock on the endpoint. As you can see, there's a few bits you have to go through first. You obviously have to go through the domain Javelineers, and then you have to unlock both nodes to be able to head down them. But it's nothing crazy expensive. It's going to be sort of in and around 25,000 on or something like that. Obviously, there are the upgrades to do afterwards. Nothing super interesting. There's a bit of a ammunition one here, but for what is going to be like 30,000-40,000 on it to give you 10% ammo boost, not really worth it to me. And piercing defense and slashing defense increases you have to do to get there. Again, they're a melee unit, but they're not all that amazing in it. So I've got mine up to level 15. I nearly ground them at the final level just for the video because it would make them elite. But the actual difference it makes is really kind of small. Bar the appearance change, they kind of look like they're going to look quite a bit cooler when they get there. The 15% reduction in double shot isn't hugely useful because, double shot, that's 2 shots down. Considering you've then got your normal shot away as well, that's 3. Then you've got an aimed shot, so that's 4. So you never really get to use double shot twice before you're out of ammo anyway. So it's a bit of a redundant cooldown in my opinion. So I was kind of happy to where we got to because I actually unlocked the double shot and I've been trying it with the double shot. So stat-wise, how do they work? The stats here don't reflect their javelin throwing ability. This reflects their melee ability. So it's one of those strange things that it looks like they don't do very much damage. You think they throw a javelin and they've got a piercing damage of 1100. You think, my god, that's worse than most archer militia. But that's not the case. That's not reflective of their javelin damage. Javelins are going to be hitting for sort of 2, 3, 4, 5,000 damage per hit. And I don't know if it's a derivative of this piercing damage or it's just a separate hidden value we don't get to see. But this seems to be much more their melee ability. So how do they perform in melee? Not that amazingly. They're reasonable. They'll go toe-to-toe. Most units, they do block. They do a reasonable amount of damage, but they don't have that much in the way of defensive stats. Their piercing damage defense isn't too bad, but I'm buffing that with the doctrine. Slashing, 460. We're a 4-star unit by this point. If you go up against the unit of Spear Sergeants or something like that, they will just kill you. Flat out, they'll win. So yeah, it's okay. If you can get a good javelin toss or 2 in first, and get that damage, kill off the unit, then get stuck in, then they do okay. Because they're outnumbering, and they can sort of make up for some of their melee discrepancies with the earlier damage they got. So yeah, they've got 105 ammo. I'm running mine with a full set of 5 doctrines. I've increased piercing damage and armor penetration. As I said, I don't know if their piercing AP and piercing damage is what derives the javelin damage, or if their javelin damage is just a fixed separate value that has sort of nothing to do with their piercing and offensive stats. I don't know. But in which case, either way, it still makes their melee slightly better. So I'd got them, so I thought, well, sod it, I'll stick them on. Increased damage to heroes. Ideally, I'd have liked an increased damage to units, but I didn't have one of those doctrines, and these guys do are really fun to one-shot heroes, so any little bit of help with that is always a positive, so I'll put that one on. Obviously, the Rare Javelin Doctrine, an essential one with this unit. Now, you have a good base ammo amount, so when you add this on, it actually gives them a significant increase in ammo. I also ran one of these on the Black Dragon Javelineers, and it didn't really do much, because You're not adding that because I have such a low starting ammo. You only have 2. You know, if you're adding 10% onto effectively 2 javelins, it doesn't really add anything. But because these guys have got a much higher ammo count, adding the javelin doctrine significantly increases them. It really enables you to get to that 5 javelin throw. And then I actually threw a slashing defense on them. I thought I'd put a piercing one on. The slashing defense must have been shocking beforehand then. So I threw one of them on as well. So let's hop into some gameplay. I guess the last thing we could look at, kit cost, 3,200. Relatively expensive in terms of heroic hero unit, but could be worse. Let's hop into some gameplay, take a bit of a look at these guys, and kind of see how we actually managed to get on in combat. So, not exactly my best game in terms of kills, but I thought this is a really nice one because it shows quite a few aspects of the Javelins, and that's kind of why we're taking a look at it. So, initially, we're in the middle of a siege. I'm just starting to push up the siege tower, and we see the Imperial Spear Guard advancing. So I wanted to push forwards, try to push in, and then I'm using the manual control to get a full Javelin volley in the back. Straight up, 11 kills. Really nice start. I was really pleased with that. Against what is a heroic hero unit, quite an expensive leadership unit. And, you know, we just took out a really good chunk at them with a huge Javelin volley to the back. Works really well against them. They've got no shields. They take full damage. And because they were so tightly clustered, you know, the Javelins couldn't really miss. And you'll see really well in a very quick succession of time, we're up to almost 30 kills just fighting in this sort of initial part of the staircase. But, you know, I've tossed sort of 3 or 4 Javelins already. I'm down to basically my last shot. But because we're capturing the A point, I thought it was worth continuing to push up. We have lost a unit, and this is kind of where I make my first mistake. I should have pulled back effectively here. I get a Javelin toss in basically to the face of the advancing pike units, and then I stop and turn around and go for this guy here. I shouldn't have done that. I should have pulled the Javelins through, got them out of the way. Look, casualties are still tacking up now, down to 18, down to 17, 16. Oh, before we managed to get out, that's 8 of the unit dead. You know, a third of the unit gone, just by sort of loitering around too long. They are okay in melee, this unit. They're not completely feeble. They're not an archer unit. They still have 8,500 hit points, but they take damage fairly quickly. They don't have amazing defensive stats. So by sort of loitering around too long once I was out of ammo, in sort of a fairly big fight situation like that, it cost me, well, a third of the unit for no real gain. I didn't get any extra kills from it. I didn't really help anyone. So that was kind of an error. That's why I tend to use these guys in melee as a last resort, or when I really want to try and push a point, or, you know, it's really important to make a move there. So as we're pushing back in, I just clipped the back of those Halberdier Sergeants since they were there. Seemed kind of rude not to kill them. And then we go in through the gateway. I'm thinking, well, I was kind of disappointed at this point. You know, I feel like I've lost a third of the unit. It's kind of ruined this is going to be any good clip. But then I thought, well, no, come on, let's keep going. We go in, I just throw in against these Tesserags who are sort of defending the gateway, and as we get them, we clear through and push through. And as a unit of prefetch guards on the other side, they go for a charge. I immediately smash Javelin. It was lucky the unit managed to clear the gateway in time to really get a proper throw off. And then look, I'm going for the double Javelin toss there, and the second toss, we get the hero kill, and the unit is dead. And we killed the bulk of that unit, if I'm honest, and we didn't take any losses, and that was effectively in melee. And another important point, see how much ammo I've got? Watch my ammo. Even though there was only the tiniest fraction of ammo left on the unit, the whole unit gets to throw. So if we break that down, a lot happened there in that quick period. If the unit has any amount of ammo, even if it's just 1, then the whole unit will throw so long as there's a tiny amount of ammo. So that's really important. So that's why that 10% doctrine makes a huge difference, because even though it's not enough to give everyone an extra Javelin in terms of that 10%, it means there's a little bit of ammo left over after the 4th shot normally, and that means that they actually have enough to throw an extra full round of Javelins. So that's kind of a really useful little thing to know about all Javelin units, kind of how the game mechanics work in that. But I was really pleased against those Javelin Sergeants. You know, we're a 2/3 strength unit against what is a very effective unit. You know, Prefecture Guards are a really dominant unit at their tier. And we'll basically be able to face them in melee, using that double shot, you know, really sort of absolutely knock them down super fast. But that's why it's important to have a full stack of Javelins or a decent amount of ammo with you kind of when you can. So anyway, the rest of the team did a good job, knocked out the B point while we were fighting over that supply, and we're now onto the C point. So I'm thinking, right, where are we going to go here? So I'm looking up maybe the supply point, thinking about pushing up here while the unit's coming. Prepare for some of the worst hero controlling you've ever seen. where I was swinging there. I managed to hit one retreating archer unit out of 3. Good job, Evo. Some pretty pretty terrible playing there. But the unit arrives, and I think, well, there's no point in pushing the supply. We really want the C point. There's not that many enemies there. And I decided just to go for it. Go for this poleaxe since I had my ultimate on cooldown. I actually go for a javelin toss there. It wasn't really worth it because the hero died beforehand. If he hadn't, he would have been absolutely obliterated by 16 javelins. But then I'm thinking, like, where can we contribute here? Go for a javelin toss into sort of some of the units in front of us. Just getting damage in where I can, basically. I tried to keep the unit a little bit out of the range of some of the enemy archers, because you are taking a fair chunk of damage. But again, in this sort of situation, it really suits the javelins. Just holding them back from that very front line as the second line unit, just using them to keep that damage potential up, getting that damage into enemy units all the time. And, you know, good, we're up to like 80 kills now. And really, yes, we've lost some of the unit, but we lost them in kind of a silly way. We could really still be a full strength unit at this point. So as I run up to the supply point, obviously I throw my last few javelins. If you're going to go up to a supply point, you know, always throw your javelins. You'll restock as soon as we get to this point. They'll instantly be back to full ammo because of the way it kind of works, unlike archers and stuff. So there we go, full ammo immediately. So you always, if you're ever approaching a supply point with any enemies, I mean, always throw the javelins because you may as well, you know, get the extra damage. Even if it saves just one allied unit, then it was kind of worthwhile. So obviously we're now on to the final point. We've got to kind of clear this out. Got to try and capture the actual final point. And the team, which I've been really pleased at, a really nice team on this match, which really helped. You know, starts pushing you in really hard, and you know, I'm starting to push up, starting to think about what I want to do. Initially, I think, well, let's try some range. Let's try some range javelineering. You see sort of how we do. We get some reasonable hits. We're sort of hitting 2, 3, 4, 5,000 against this shield wall. As you can see, we penetrate most of the ones that hit, though because of the long range and the inaccuracy, we don't necessarily hit everything. And you can see the rate of fire I get there in those 4 volleys. You know, we actually were able to throw a lot of javelin ammo in a very quick period of time. I think because of the range, it didn't get that much sort of kills in. I think we got a chunk of damage, but I think you really need to be closer than I kind of was at that distance, unless you're shooting against sort of very lightly armored units, or you're like on a supply point or something like that. But you can see, still did a good chunk of damage. And obviously it penetrated the shield, so that's because these guys get a plus 90% shield block break in the veterancy line, so it's well worth bearing in mind. See it again here, throwing at this Imperial Javelin Sergeants, Imperial Spear Guard even, say the right unit, and you can see the sort of damage we get, even though they're in a full block shielded unit. So we go in, I unfortunately get shot in the back by that ballista behind me, not very good situational awareness on my part, and I'm sort of thinking, well, let's start to get some javelin tosses against some of these enemy ranged units at the back of the map. We'll go for a double toss, see if we get a few kills even at range. You know, clocks up a few kills on what's left of that kind of unit. I think, oh well, let's just go for our targeted little thing just to get the last of the ammo out. Push, 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 get another couple of kills. Not that much of that sort of range, but you know, again, kind of worth it. Still helps clear out some of these points, helps our troops move forwards. And then kind of thinking, I thought about retreating, but at the same time, you know, we're kind of looking like we're starting to push this point a little bit. We've got a few friendly troops here. If I could sort of try and encourage everyone to get going forwards, then we might be in a decent spot. So obviously, I start to decide, come on, let's go melee with this unit. And you get the idea of how they perform in this sort of brief period here. They don't do all that badly. So I set them on to engage. Basically, it gives me time to start to destroy some of the enemy artillery. I hadn't realised quite how many heroes there were around here, but look at the kills I'm getting. You know, we're up now over 100 kills. Just in that melee, but you know, they might have got, you know, 8, 9, 10 kills in melee, probably for a 10 to 12 man unit. Nothing amazing, but you know, this is not what they're about. They're not a melee unit. You know, for a heroic era unit, they perhaps perform similar to a silver era melee unit, but that is still pretty reasonable considering the amount of damage they can do just with their javelins. They do okay in hand to hand. I mean, we saw that earlier on in the match with the prefetch guards. For what it's worth, we did go on to win that match because I still had a full stack of units because the Javelin Sergents was actually all I'd used that match. So it was actually a really nice one for us. So that really sums up kind of how I've been finding Javelin Sergeants, really. I think they're a really nice unit. They perform really well at my current level. They're really high levels of armor penetration, make them really nice against heavily armored units like Reapers and stuff like that. They counter them really quite well. The large amount of ammunition, I think, makes them significantly superior to the Imperial Javelins. You're certainly going to be wanting to go down the top line. The double shot is really quite nice, particularly when you get close to a supply point. You can just lob the ammo super fast and really get that rate of fire out. So yeah, Javelin Sergents, a unit well worth checking out. Really fun unit to play, and always really satisfying to sort of lob javelins into the face of your enemies. So that's all I've got for you on this video. If you've enjoyed it, please do let me know what you think in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe to the channel for a load more Conqueror's Blade content, and I shall see you guys all on the next video.